Welcome back, everyone. We're here at GEF Live during the GEF Assembly. It is day 3, and today we're diving into some of the key topics, the challenges that we need to address when we're looking at how to manage the global commons and how to kind of champion a new climate and development agenda moving forward. I'm very excited to have Sekhran here with us today, the Chief Conservation Officer of the World Wildlife Fund. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So you've just come from the roundtable on wildlife, and we want to dive into this topic and share with our viewers some of the key concepts, the key challenges and solutions that WWF is providing. So you've worked on the front lines of the poaching crisis in Africa on the supply side. What do you see as the critical leverage points that need to be addressed to turn the tide for wildlife in Africa?
You know, I was in South Africa in 2007. I've lived in South Africa for many years. In South Africa in 2007, we lost 13 rhinos. At the time, we never anticipated that 10 years later, we'd be losing one every 7 hours. We lost 1,050 rhinos in 2017. So the crisis has escalated. It's escalated beyond everyone's response capacity. But the international community has stepped up to the plate. And the Global Environment Facility in particular has played a critical role building capacity in countries to address the problem. It's a big issue. You've got to deal with it at multiple levels on the ground where the wildlife resides. You know, it's traded to distant countries, so you've got to deal with demand. And you know, that trade takes place through transportation, so ships and aeroplanes. It goes through transit countries. So you've got to choke the trade at each level. On the ground, in Africa and Asia and South America, I think there are 5 vital ingredients, and the GEF has provided support across all 5 areas. The first is you need the support of communities. You need to have empowered communities. They need to be incentivized and they need to be capacitated to become stewards of wildlife. That's what I said at the roundtable. There are good examples from around the world where communities have become stewards. Namibia is a good one. In Namibia, some 20% of the land of the country are in community conservancies, owned by communities. The communities manage them in ways that they benefit from wildlife. And it's been very successful. Wildlife numbers are up. Communities are often engaged in tourism, working with private companies. There's some 57 joint ventures between communities and companies working in these concession areas, and it's generating significant money. So that's the first thing, having community support, making sure that community rights are in place. The second is that you need boots on the ground. You need to have rangers. They need to be trained, they need to be equipped, they need to be out on patrol. And this is a real problem in many countries. Here in Southeast Asia, Myanmar, 40 parks, some 543 rangers. It's nothing. One park in Nepal, Chitwan, has 1,600 rangers. Of course, Chitwan has rhinos, and rhinos are highly coveted. Trade in rhino horn, they're very valuable, so you need lots of boots on the ground. But clearly in Myanmar and elsewhere, we need to up the game. We also need to ensure that they have the tools at their disposal to make a difference. And technology here, it provides us with a number of avenues for better reaching our enforcement aims. I'm an environmental economist. For me, enforcement economics is an interesting discipline. How do you maximize your deterrence at the least cost? And in Chitwan, where there has been zero poaching of rhinos, it's a phenomenal feat. We've been using technology. Google provided through WWF some $5 million worth of tech support. We've had CCTVs, cameras with secure radio links back to a base. We've been able to monitor footage of what's happening across the park, who's entering the park illegally, and then allowing the ranger patrols, the army in that case, because the Nepalese army is responsible for enforcement in that park, to go out and intercept poachers, prospective poachers. So that's been really great. You also need to have effective collaboration between law enforcement authorities, local communities, and rangers. And of course, again, in Chitwan, there's a really great community informant network which works very closely with law enforcement authorities. And that's one of the reasons why Nepal has been so successful in this front. And we're hoping that Nepal was going to announce a doubling of wildlife numbers, of tiger numbers, since the last year of the tiger in 2010. WWF, we've set an ambitious target of doubling tigers by the next year of the tiger, which is in 2022, and Nepal looks likely to be the first country to meet that target. So those are sort of three major ingredients. I mean, a fourth one is you just need to have better prosecution. You need to have support, you know, for just managing cases once a poacher has been intercepted and the case goes to court. You need to have adequate penalties. Often penalties are very weak, so you need to up that game. Namibia has increased the penalty for killing an elephant or a rhino to $1.8 million. And of course, that's not intended for the small guy, but the big kingpins behind it. And finally, I know this is a long list of things. You need to have transboundary cooperation. You need to collaborate. You need to share information. I'm just talking about the supply side in terms of what happens on the ground in country. That's what I spoke about at the round table, so I won't speak about the other elements, but it was great to be here and to have an exchange with other experts, practitioners in the field, and also to really to recognize the important role the GEF is playing, has played, and will continue to play in this area.
Well, thank you for breaking down a really complex issue. There's many different conflicts with human and wildlife interactions and many challenges. So thank you for outlining those 5 different spaces that people can contribute and that you and WWF with Jeff are contributing to change. One of them being really championing innovative tech and incorporating tech into successful conservation efforts. I want to shift conversations into funding. So how has Jeff worked with WWF on funding mechanisms that provide permanent financing for protected areas, such as Bhutan for Life? So you're currently working to expand that model to other countries, such as Peru and Colombia. And what can we learn from your work so far on these funding mechanisms? What have they accomplished, and why do you believe that they're so important?
Thank you. Well, protected areas in so many ways are the mainstream of conservation. It's where our jewels, okay, the most critically threatened wildlife reside. Also very important in protecting watersheds, ecosystem services of vital significance for human development, the economy. But often countries do not have the financial wherewithal today to invest optimally in protected area management, including, I talked about the need to have boots on the ground, enough rangers, including having sufficient ranger cadres, sufficient in terms of dealing with enormous threats that many of these areas now confront. That said, these countries are growing, and 15 years down the line, they'll have the financial wherewithal to make these investments. The issue is we might lose the wildlife, we might lose the wildlands before then, and then of course they have no asset. So what this idea, it's called Project Financing for Permanence in WWF, we've called it Earth for Life. It was coined by the Prime Minister of Bhutan. Is an effort to resource in those years, well, from today to the point at which countries can absorb the cost themselves because they are wealthier. So capital that supports protected area management. So at WWF we did a big deal in the Amazon called ARPA, $231 million, 60 million hectares which have been secured. In Bhutan we're hoping to reach closure very shortly on what we call Bhutan for Life. It's $43 million, 2 million hectares, and the same model, and we're working hard to close Peru, which is I think $70 million, 16 million hectares, and so on and so forth, Colombia, and then there's a lot of countries lining up for this sort of support. The GEF is pivotal to these initiatives. It provides an anchor role, either through working through WWF or in the case of Bhutan, the GEF resources are being channeled through UNDP. And we look forward to working very closely with the GEF in this initiative. I'm personally very excited about this initiative, and I hope you are too.
Yeah, for sure. I've noticed here that the many people we're talking to, we're very hopeful about these grand challenges and how we can actually solve them. So what is what's keeping your hope alive? Because those numbers that you cited in the beginning aren't very inspiring. So what makes you feel like we can tackle this in our lifetimes?
Young people. I am amazed by the energy of young people. Yesterday, the World Heritage Site Committee met in Bahrain, dealing with a number of very challenging concerns. Many World Heritage sites are grievously threatened. But there's a major victory to celebrate, and that is Belize has banned offshore oil drilling. And that happened, well, for many reasons, but the citizens united. But there was a young girl, 11, who played the pivotal role. Her name is Madison Edwards, in campaigning to stop it. She is quite something else, okay? She spoke behind the World Heritage Committee. Initially, they didn't want her to speak, and then everyone said, oh no, she has to speak. She is just a powerful force. And so she said we were angry. I started to use social media. She snorkeled the length of the barrier reef, not in one go, but you know, it's the second longest barrier reef in the world, and she raised awareness the plight of the reef. And you know, the GEF has been heavily involved in conserving Belize's natural riches for many years, and for protecting the Belizean reef. And all of that investment could have been challenged by this new threat of oil exploration, and ultimately oil exploration leads to you know, exploitation if you find oil. So the fact that the country has banned it, something many other countries have not done or are moving in the opposite direction, is, I think, remarkable. And isn't it even more remarkable that an 11-year-old girl has played the pivotal role in making that happen? That excites me, and it just makes me feel very hopeful for the future. At WWF, it so happens that young people have some of the highest brand recognition. In the US, 8 out of 10 young people know what the panda stands for. And that's amazing, because that makes us feel that through young people, using our officers, our brand, we can make a difference.
For sure. We have heard that over and over again today, that we are more conscious than we were before. We're more aware of the choices that we're making, and we are hopeful and passionate about the future. So to close off, we want to re-engage you online who are watching. What is your advice to the young professionals who want to make a difference in this space? And what has been some great advice that you've received in the past? Oh,
I had mentors, had people who believed in me when I was very young. I believe myself. I've got to pay it forward, pay it back. And so young people who are excited about wildlife, I take the time and effort myself to try and be a good mentor to them. I say you need to be hopeful, because yes, it's a challenge out there. And you know, human population is growing, the world economy is growing, so these correspond in more pressures on nature. But we have made a big difference. If we weren't pushing, we'd be in much worse off state. If the GEF didn't exist, we'd be in real trouble. And so we really do have an opportunity to make a difference. And I think the work we're doing today is hopefully will pass on a world which the young people of today can carry on the baton and continue the charge and protect the wonderful riches of this wonderful planet.
Thank you so much, Nick, for being with us. Thank you, WWF, for the amazing work you do and in making us believe that we can have our wildlife and that conservation is working. Thank you, everyone, for watching on GEF Live. We're continuing this series and continue to engage in this conversation with our hashtag. And we will talk to you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.